Hi, I'm Greg.
And I'm Leanne.
Welcome to Empowered Now,
where we save humanity one relationship at a time. We all struggle from time to time connecting with and understanding others and ourselves.
So we hope to encourage you to live a more authentic and empowered life by sharing what we've learned as coaches and as individuals.
Empowered Now is LGBTQ2IA, alternative lifestyle, poly, and kink friendly.
Thanks for joining us
and enjoy the show. Hi friends, welcome back to part 2 of our discussion about couples privilege in poly and CNM with our special guest, Michael Love. If you're interested in learning more about couples privilege and hierarchy, please go back to part 1 and have a listen. In this episode, we'll be discussing topics like veto power and unicorn hunting. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, one of the things that we were going to talk about today is veto power.
Yes.
Oh, we get the long S's on that one.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. What's been your experience with that?
Again, this is a thing. I think a lot of couples that come into non-monogamy, particularly on the swinger side of things, embrace that veto power. Like they embrace being able to have the ability to say, I don't want you to be with that person for whatever reason. Now, there are sometimes...
Michael,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but can I ask, in the swinger community, the veto power is quite common, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah, that's not part of I'm not a swinger. Mm-hmm. I have swinger friends, but that's sort of part of the common vernacular when they're in a club, in a situation. There's very much a veto for both people, I think.
Right.
Unless there's a DS dynamic or something like that in play.
Not only that, not only is it common, but it's also a fetish too, right? There's hot wifing, mm-hmm. right? Where the husband or the male in the partnership will actually pick out partners for his female partner to have sex with.
Well, in a DS community, the same thing. Yeah.
In a DS community,
it's kind of my jam.
Yeah. So great, but that is in and of itself a form of veto, because you're saying yes to this person and no to that person, even though your wife might find the other person hotter than that person that you picked.
Right.
She doesn't really have a say in it as long as that's consensual and agreed to beforehand, right?
I don't know that that's necessarily...
We always have a say.
Right. I was going to say, I don't know that that's necessarily quite the dynamic of how it works, or at least not in my experience. Like, for me, I enjoy watching my wife with other men, like or women too. That's a relatively new thing, but I enjoy watching that and sometimes being a part of that. But for us, I don't pick her partner. She does that. She does that herself. Mm-hmm. But where the veto comes in is when swinger couples, primarily when swinger couples are interacting in a club or in a party or something like that, and they only play together, or maybe not necessarily playing together, where one of the partners will be talking to someone and they'll be like, no, they rub my fur the wrong way. I do get a vibe from them I don't like. It's the arbitrary vetoes that are difficult. And in cases like where Ellie and I, she was more into the casual swinging, non-poly kind of connections, where I was into the poly connections, where veto gets to be a challenge. And we had veto in our relationship early on. It was one of our growth opportunities where we had a situation where I was getting, it was my first real love. It was the first serious girlfriend that I had. And there were just aspects to her and our relationship that just Ellie didn't like. She felt threatened by. And then we did a thing and that triggered Ellie, and she was like, no more. I can't see her anymore. I'm playing the veto card. And it was devastating to me. It was, here's this person that I'm in love with, and all I'm doing is doing things that I would do with the partner that I'm in love with. And now this person that is my life is now telling me that I can't see that person anymore. Like it nearly ended our relationship. It nearly ended mine and Ellie's relationship because it was just so incredibly damaging. And we got through that. It took a few weeks for us to get through that, and it was a lot of battling and a lot of communication, a lot of negotiation, and a hell of a lot of tears. But ultimately, what it took was me taking a stand and saying, if we're going to go past this point, we don't have veto anymore. I will never let you do this to me again. And we'll deal with the challenges that come up. We'll deal with the difficulties that come up, but this option is no longer on the table. In our life and in our journey, we look back at that moment, and it was a pivotal moment in our relationship, and it was kind of ground zero for us. And I look back at that and think having that rule was a mistake. Now, I know there are a lot of people that have that rule in their relationship, even polyamorous people that are coming into this from a polyamorous perspective. They want to protect that core relationship. But the problem is that when it's the nuclear bomb that you never want to use, right? That's how we looked at it. It's a nuclear bomb you never want to use. But the problem is when you actually employ it, because you can, the person that you hurt the worst is the person you care about the most. And it can be devastating for your relationship. And that's the part that people don't understand until they've lived through that moment that Ellie and I lived through. And I will say, I talked to her before coming on here and wanted to make sure that I had her permission to share this story. And she feels a lot of shame around this. But she also understands that this was a learning moment for us. It was an opportunity. It was a place where we grew from, and that's okay. It comes back to that. Give yourself permission to make mistakes. Give yourself permission to fail. Grow from it. Move on from it. And that's one of the things in our group that I really try to push with people is people will. Wherever you are, whatever rules you have, whatever you've got going on in your life, that's where you are today. It's where you are today is not where you'll be tomorrow. And a year down the road, you'll look back at where you are today, like I did yesterday, and you're going to cringe. You're going to be like, oh, did I actually say that? And probably a year from now, I'll probably look back at this video and go, oh my God, did I say that? Really? It's part of the growth. And that's why in our group, we don't let people judge people for where they're at, because where you are, where someone is right now is where they need to be right now. And they have these rules, they have these things in place because that's what makes them feel safe. And hopefully my story of this will help somebody take an introspective look and say, maybe this isn't such a great thing. I don't want to do this to my partner. I don't want to have this ground zero pivotal moment with my partner. What Michael said actually makes some sense. And maybe we need to take another look at this veto thing and make sure that it's not something that's going to cause that kind of havoc in our lives.
Yeah.
A beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Like, I had goosebumps. It was incredible. I really appreciate your vulnerability, Michael. Thank you. So I see you and I hear you.
Thank you.
One of the things that I wanted to point out too was the impact that veto power has on the other person.
Of course. Yeah. Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Like, because they have no control. Like, I know some of our listeners are probably going to be solo poly identifying, or people they're going to be the girlfriend in the triad or whatever your dynamic or whatever definitions and terms you're using for your relationship. But you're going to be that person that's impacted by that veto power, and you have no say over it. And that's why relationship autonomy is so fucking important to me. It's because I never want to find myself in a position where somebody that I love and care about is hurting somebody else that I love and care about.
Right.
And they can't do anything, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way to fight that. There's no way to and it's just not, it's not compassionate. It's not kind. But I do understand why it's there. Like you, I get it, because I had it too. Like, I was in a 10-year marriage that started out as a BDSM relationship, and it blossomed into a full-on poly relationship. And we had veto power. And like you, it got to the point where it's like, I can't do this anymore. Like, it was literally a breaking point. I was like, this is not what we agreed to.
Right.
This is not who we are as people. And if we want to honor ourselves and our relationships, this is the way we need to move forward. And it broke our marriage up. But the reality is that it also made us better people, because when we did come back together, we were able to find a way forward that was more in line with us as individuals and autonomous human beings. And it turns out the marriage didn't last, which frankly was a wonderful gift that she gave me because, well, a host of reasons. But the reality is that veto power had such a negative impact, or such a hurtful impact rather, on the other person.
Right.
And you're not even aware of that. Like, that's not even in your viewpoint at that point. All you're thinking about is, how do I protect myself? How do I keep myself safe? How do I make sure that I still feel secure and safe, and that what I love and what I need is looked after and protected.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's really all that's important in those moments.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring up, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Leanne. Sorry. I'm not raising my hand.
I want to bring up the sort of ultimate commonplace veto that happens, that I see with a lot of people that I'm working with. So we have the anchor partner, or the nesting partner, or the marital partner, and they're having issues in their relationship. And that's when the veto card is played.
Right.
And typically that is it blows everything up, right? Because we're already in struggle in our relationship, and here you are willing to put me in a position where I have to hurt someone else that I care about, and you're hurting me. Right. And that's, like you said, the worst thing that could happen. And you're already in the point where you're not communicating well. There are broken agreements. There are things that need to be, revamped, renegotiated, reinvented. We don't have the energy for that when we're wounded and like you said, devastated, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's really awful to watch that. So for me, that's when it's commonly played, or the reverse. Not the reverse really, but the threatened party plays the veto card when the escalation happens in the other relationship. It's okay if you're having sex, but as soon as you have feelings for them, now you can't see them. Right. Right?
I think about go ahead, Mike. One of the things that's discussed in the group often around veto power is, some people talk about when they see actual harmful behaviors like drug use, excessive alcohol use, like things that are inherently unhealthy. And to me, that is a little bit more of an acceptable reason to have a veto, but then that's not really veto if you are having conversations around that.
Right. Can I interject something into that?
Sure. Yeah.
So one of the things that about being a relationship autonomous that comes up for me when I hear you say that is the difference between veto power and being autonomous about your relationships is this. So veto power would be, hey, look, that person's engaging in illegal drugs and it's impacting them, and I don't want you to get involved, so you need to stop seeing them.
Right.
That's veto power. Or I don't want to be impacted by that, or I don't want the cops showing up at my door, so that's veto power, right? So you need to stop seeing them. That's veto power. But the other way to look at it as autonomous is to make I statements and say, I'm uncomfortable with this relationship. I'm uncomfortable with, or I'm concerned that the cops are going to show up. So what is it that you're going to do to help mitigate those risks for me?
Right.
Right? As opposed to saying, you need to do this. Mm-hmm. So even if the behavior is damaging and hurtful, even if the behavior is illegal, you still have a right. You can still say, look, you can still see that person, but just understand I'm not going to be here.
Right. So I mean,
it's not a veto thing per se. It's a very different way of communicating it.
It's like you're in your sovereignty as an individual and saying,
exactly,
I won't be, Like it comes down to boundaries, your personal boundaries now, right?
Right.
So I won't be in a relationship with someone who engages with illegal activities, abuse, any number of negative things, right? So that's part of my work too, is I work on boundary setting with people to develop what are your lists. What is the line in the sand here for you? And you can negotiate those with yourself as you are progressing through a relationship. For example, if somebody dabbles with illegal drugs and it's in your boundaries that you will have nothing to do with a relationship with someone who does that, right? But then you see them, you step away from it, they're no longer invested in it, they're getting help or whatever. Oh, well then I'm okay to stay in this relationship, right? So yeah, that comes down to your sovereignty, your boundaries. Yeah.
Well, I think that veto power by the nature of veto power is anti-autonomy. Like if I'm vetoing in something that my partner is doing, if I'm playing a veto card or even having if I'm dictating to my partner that they can or can't do something based on some arbitrary thing, I'm not respecting her autonomy, and vice versa. And the people that but I really see this, I mean, being in the group every single day and seeing how people interact with each other and that sort of thing, the people that have veto power don't embrace autonomy. They come at it from a very couple-centric point of view. And it's and it may be that they will always be that way, but it may be just that's where they're at in their journey, that they need these rules now to have that, and that's okay if hopefully they're working past that.
I think, and that's a good point, Michael, because I think one of the things that we don't want people to do when they're listening to this, just like in the group, is we don't want them to feel judged if they do have veto power.
Absolutely.
So here's the thing with veto power. If you do have it and you do feel like you're in a place in your life where you need that in your relationships, be honest with the people that are coming into your relationships. Tell them that my wife has veto power over who I see. Tell them that my husband has veto power over who I see. And if they don't like you, then you're not in, period.
Right.
Because that gives
them the autonomy.
Yeah.
Give them the autonomy to make decisions for themselves based upon their boundaries and what they're comfortable with.
We're talking informed consent, right?
Exactly.
I know what I'm signing up for in that case. In general, things shift and change, and we can't predict that it might, happen. But if it does shift or change, I'm hoping that someone would tell me as well. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I would also add to that. I mean, you're absolutely correct, Greg, that if that's where you are and where you need to be, then you should definitely tell people that are coming into your life that you have that dynamic. However, take a deeper step into that and find out why you need that. Ask yourself, why do I need to be able to have this control over my partner when I already have an amazing relationship with my partner? Why can't we talk about these stresses that might cause me to have to employ a veto card? And why just, instead of having that veto, why don't we just have an agreement that says, hey, if I have an issue with one of your relationships or one of your partners, let's agree to be able to sit down and talk about that.
The question that comes up for me a lot when I talk about with my clients is it's a very simple question. It's, what are you afraid of?
Right.
Or what are you trying to protect? Right? And those questions are often the same thing. I'm afraid of losing what? Well, I'm afraid of losing my partner, or I'm afraid of losing my marriage, or I'm afraid of this, or I'm afraid of that, or I'm trying to protect, my feelings and not get hurt. Well, the reality is that you can't protect yourself from being hurt. You're going to get hurt. It's going to happen. So the issue isn't trying to protect yourself from being hurt. The issue is building up your resilience and being able to manage and navigate through that hurt as it comes up.
I have a thought that relates to that, and you're going to love this. It's an analogy for me that relationships are like Jell-O in your hand. And the tighter that you squeeze that relationship, the more it's going to squeeze out through your fingers.
That's kind of hot, actually. A little bit.
If you cup it, you'll be able to hold it forever.
Even better.
Right?
Thank you for that word, cup it. Cup me.
Jello, cupping, I don't know.
Cupping.
Here.
Yeah. I'm a little turned on right now. Turn the camera off for a second.
We might need a moment.
You guys keep going. Don't pay attention to any noises you might be hearing.
Mute yourself, Greg.
I didn't know this was going to be that kind of a podcast. All right.
Yeah. Oh, it's all kind of podcasts.
It's all.
That's actually a really good point, though. That's a great analogy, because the tighter that you try to hold on to something, the less, absolutely, like it's just going to squirt out all over the place.
Right.
Wow. That was bad.
I say that with a straight face.
Oh my God, you guys.
All right, let's just move on. Yeah.
It's a pity. There's like 1,200 miles between us. We could have, we could have a lot of fun.
Right. I think you're right, though. I think that the harder we try to hold on to that and protect it, that's what I call, like, there's life affirming and life protecting emotions, right? Mm-hmm. And jealousy is a life protecting emotion. It's trying to protect us and keep us safe in some way. And I think that couples privilege as a concept, prescriptive couples privilege as a concept is all about protecting something. So what are you trying to protect? And once you've discovered what you're trying to protect, are there other ways that you can get that same sense of safety and comfort and foundation that don't involve impacting other people in a negative way, or in a hurtful or damaging way? And ultimately, I think that's what all of this comes down to, is I can think back on my personal experiences when I was veto powering or in couples privilege mode, or, had a shit ton of rules and stuff. It was all about trying to protect myself from getting hurt. Guess what? It didn't fucking work. Right? Because I got hurt anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Or I hurt people because of it, frankly.
Yeah.
On the other end of it, right? I wanted what I wanted. I didn't know how to advocate for that. So I went out and I did it anyway, and I caused people harm.
Yep.
Myself included.
True
right?
story. So
if you can just, to those people that are listening out there right now that see autonomy as a threat, it is a threat. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely a threat to whatever you're trying to protect.
Right.
Because your ego, monkey, your brain weasels or whatever, aren't going to slow down long enough for you to be able to allow that to sit comfortably with you. And if you can just simply allow that to sit comfortably with you and recognize that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay.
Right.
Even if shit goes sideways and everybody's hurt and we're all crying and bleeding all over the place, there's still a way to repair that. Even if it's not repairing the relationship, but you can repair yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And you can build up a resilience through that.
Well, more importantly, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I can keep going. I'm on a roll.
You and me both.
Just cut me the fuck off. It's fine.
More importantly, and this is one of the things, when Ellie and I sit down and we talk, and when she's having her own brain weasel moments and that sort of thing, and what I tell her is the way that I get through these moments, you can build these barriers around your relationship to try and protect it, which is doing harm to other people, but it's also doing harm to yourself and your own relationship. Or you can just be the best partner to that person that you can be. Protect that relationship by being the partner that your partner is never going to want to get rid of. Like, you strive to be supportive and flexible and loving and caring, and they're never going to find that with somebody else. I mean, they probably could. Anybody is, can be that. But if you are that to that person, why would they ever want to replace you?
Mm-hmm.
And
well, yeah. Go ahead.
And invest your energy into that rather than trying to control or protect your relationship. Because by doing that, you're improving your relationship and protecting it at the same time in a positive and affirmative kind of a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the replaceability factor is something that people struggle with. Hey, a lot. Mm-hmm. I hear that a lot. What helps me when I feel replaceable is to remind myself of, each relationship has its own unique vibe, dynamic, individual connection points, history, experiences, and I can't be replaced. So that really does help me because, Greg has a tendency to date really accomplished, beautiful women who are much younger than me.
Which is a trigger.
It's very threatening, especially I'm in my mid 50s. I'm, getting to that place where I'm, starting to feel like not so cute. But that's your cue.
Absolutely, you are.
Yeah,
I didn't want to interrupt you, but
I didn't want to interrupt you either. But
I'm just teasing.
so I am going to, no, you've given me the opportunity, so I'm going to jump right in on this. Just so you know, you are my rocking porch partner, and you always will be. Like you are that person that has made yourself invaluable to me.
And we've also discussed that there might be other people on the rocking porch with us, but we know that we'll be there.
And yes, we know it's a rocking porch, not a rocking chair. We're aware of that.
Yeah, it's a
just
joke.
Work with us on. It's a joke. But anyway,
he's your husband, and he has to say that, and I'm not. And I'm just going to say you're absolutely gorgeous. So I'm actually surprised to hear you say that you are over 50, because I wouldn't have guessed that.
Oh yes,
so
I'm
only except because you're with that old guy, I figured you probably might be, but
he's younger than me.
Oh, okay. Now that is a surprise.
Yeah, that's true. So I just want to touch on a couple of other types of privilege that crop up for people that are kind of internalized, like having a history. I'm sure Christina, coming into your triad, was kind of like clueless as to the in-jokes, right? Or the people that you were talking about, who are these people? Or, didn't know family members or friends as well, and so didn't have that history. So you and Ellie would have sort of a shorthand that you speak, right? Yeah. This is something that I'm working with in a triad right now, actually, through the coaching. And so that's something that that people don't really get, right? They don't see it unless they're that person who's not been around that long, and they're like, I'm clueless as to what's happening in this conversation right now. So I would encourage you, if you're that person, to jump in there and say, who are those people? Tell me more. Right. Get curious and involved rather than sitting back and feeling left out. And then if you're their partner, step forward and say, oh yeah, we were talking about my cousin da-da-da, and this is what they did that one time at the lake, Right. Just to help them feel that they're part of the group, the conversation, catch them up. Yeah.
I think also part of that too is maybe establishing regular check-ins as a group and as individuals, right? So if there's a new relationship happening in this triad or whatever, then hey, look, let's establish a regular check-in weekly. We sit down and how are you feeling about this? Is there anything that you need from me to feel more comfortable here? Is there anything that I need from you in order for you to feel more involved, right? So I think having those check-ins is a really good idea too, because often
any partner,
for any partner, right? But also especially for those new relationships, right, that are forming while existing relationships are already in place, right? Because sometimes the partner maybe they're introverted, and maybe they don't know how to communicate that information in the moment. Right. And so they just kind of pack it away, and then that slowly builds up a little bit of resentment or envy or jealousy or whatever. But if you give somebody the opportunity to put that out on the table, right, in a safe space, and say, hey, look, so, is there anything in the last week that's come up for you that's been challenging that you want to share with me and that we can unpack together? And then so when it happens again, I know how, if I'm in that moment, and I know that my partner, she's told me last week that, they had a conversation about Johnny, the cousin, and she didn't know who that was, and she felt very left out. So the next time we have a conversation about another cousin, I'm going to look at my partner and say, yeah, so Annie is so-and-so, right? And, so I'm going to be a little bit more proactive about it, right?
Right.
Does that make sense? So those check-ins can be really helpful.
We don't know what we don't know, right? So it's great to have that time to check in, and it doesn't have to be all day. It can just be 15 minutes, or
unless you're us, and then it's all day.
Unless you're us.
Because you're a talker.
Yeah, we're both talkers.
It's actually, you actually brought up something, and it's something that we don't do that we probably could do more of. I mean, unfortunately, we don't get a lot of time where all three of us are under the roof at the same time. But it's probably something that we could do better about, is getting together, the three of us, and having a sit down check in to make sure that everything that's going on everything that's going on in Michael's world, particularly right now, it doesn't need to be discussed or, talked about. We do a lot of this via Facebook Messenger, and me being in the middle, back and forth, and sometimes I don't know which one that I've told, shared information with and that kind of thing. So being able to sit down and have a weekly sit down would be fantastic. It's good advice.
I also recommend that you do it not just as a triad, but honoring the individual relationships too, right? So the two metas have that check-in with each other. You have a check-in with each of your partners, right? So you have that. So it's not just the three of you doing it, but it's also each individual relationship. Because we do say, I mean, I don't know if you've heard this. I'm assuming you have, but there's 7 relationships in a triad, right?
7.
The first 3 are your individual relationships with yourself.
Right.
And then you and your established partner, you and your new partner, their relationship, and then all 3 of you together.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right.
So that's 7 relationships, right? And so most people don't include the 3 relationships that you have as individuals with yourself in that arrangement. But those are probably, in my opinion, the most important ones, because those are the foundational relationships that build up everything else, right? And so by having these check-ins, it really does help that. And you can do the check-in with yourself too. Like, what am I feeling? Yeah, the internal check-ins. What am I feeling? What do I need? Right? How do I communicate that effectively, right?
Right.
And then that also opens up, because the topic is couples privilege, that also opens you up to maybe some of those darker corners where the couples privilege might not be so obvious.
Right.
Am I doing this, right? Did I do that the other day? Earlier in this podcast, I did it.
What did you do?
Like, I forget now. That's just the way my brain works, but I know I did it. Well, because I knew that in the moment, maybe it was my verbiage, maybe it was something in what I was saying, I don't remember. But I knew that in that moment, I was implying anyway that there was a couple's privilege there, and it felt uncomfortable to me for some reason. So when I checked in with myself, I think I tried to acknowledge and own it, and then make sure that I don't do it again, right? And so sometimes it's a language thing, but language is always based upon our perception. So if it is our perception, then maybe I need to take a deeper look at that and check in with that, and just make sure that I'm honoring my alignment and my boundaries in the way I want to relate.
I have a thought on that. Also, because a lot of times when I'm talking to people that may not fully embrace that autonomy, or may that are embracing their couple's privilege. They're not thinking about this from a perspective of autonomy. But if you're checking in with yourself, it's going to start building that foundation of autonomy and making you understand that your first and your most important relationship is the relationship that you have with yourself, and being able to form a sense of self. I think a lot of couples in monogamy and starting out into non-monogamy think very couple-centrically, and they think about themselves. They think about the couple as an entity and as the first entity, and their individual selves, if it even exists at all, secondary. And it really should be the other way around if you're going to have a healthy non-codependent relationship.
Yeah,
we do exist individually, whether we acknowledge that or not. That's the point, right? is that it is there, but we get so absorbed in that codependency and that attachment to that unit idea, right? And that can happen in non-monogamy too, like a consensual non-monogamy, where we get so attached to our different relationships that we're still not really in tune with who we are as an individual. And I think that can go a long way in detangling, whatever the word is, disentangling yourself from these biases and these narratives that create couples privilege, especially the couples privilege that you might be blind to.
Right. So I just want to wrap up with one very hot topic, which is unicorn hunting. Okay, so full transparency, we've done it.
Okay.
I've been unicorn hunted. I don't necessarily have any negative experiences to share around my experiences, not at all. For me, what was important was transparency, communication, navigating agreements together, as the three of us, rather than just the two of us coming down with these are the rules, right?
Right.
We didn't do that, and I think that made it really healthy and fun and quite a great experience. So yeah, with the evil laughs from both of you, I'm sure there's some shares coming forward. Michael?
So this is a really interesting topic in our group, and it's one that comes up a lot. And for me personally,
Sorry, Michael, I just want to interrupt you for a second. Would you say that it's probably the most common topic?
Definitely one of the top three.
Right,
Yeah.
Probably that one and jealousy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
couples privilege and veto is right up there too.
Right. Anyway, sorry, I just was curious.
There was a time in my life when I subscribed to the poly, I'm going to use a word that I don't like, groupthink mentality to this. We as people, we form these little globules of people and these globules of ideas and philosophies. And there's a lot of toxic behavior that exists in couples, in unicorn hunting, that is absolutely accurate, and it happens so frequently that it is almost accepted as this is the norm and this is why it's bad. And so for me, for a long time in my life, I was very much anti-unicorn hunting. I was very much like, that is like the devil of ethical non-monogamy, to where I was like, that's not even ethical behavior. One of the things that I really love about where the direction we are going with this group is about how we preach, accept everyone, even people that you don't agree with their philosophies or their mindsets. And so unicorn hunters are actually welcome in our group. And
can you explain what that is for people?
What's that?
Can you explain for our listeners what that is? Unicorn hunting? Unicorn hunting.
Unicorn hunting is where a couple seeks out a single female, typically a single female. There are examples where they've sought out a single male. I think there's actually a different term for it, but I don't know.
Dragon hunting is the more accepted term. Although, why? Because there's male unicorns.
Don't give me. Whoever decided that unicorns were female, I want to be a fucking unicorn.
Right.
Anyway.
So the toxic part of it is that you have created this fictional place for a person that doesn't even exist yet. It's like, it would be like in monogamy, if I were to say, I want to find myself a wife, and she's going to be blonde-haired and blue-eyed and 5'2" and gives great head and is going to be down for anal anytime I want it. Sorry if that was too graphic for...
No, we're explicit, don't worry.
Feel free to bleep that out if you need to.
No,
but
if I love anal sex.
If I were to do that as a male looking for, like, trying to fill an exact niche, I'm probably not ever going to find that person. And she has to be subservient, and she has to like to cook and clean, and she has to be able to, all these things.
Michael, this isn't like a seeking a partner kind of podcast. You know that, hey? Michael just put his ad out.
Exactly.
For the record, I do the cooking in our household.
Okay. Yeah, but
Michael, this is not
couple,
OkCupid.
Yeah.
So
the couple is looking for something that is very specific, a bisexual woman that's going to be attracted to both of them, want a relationship with both of them equally, and be sexual with both of them all of the time, right?
And has to be okay with being like she has to recognize that the couple is on a pedestal.
Right.
Definitely hierarchy.
Anytime there is any kind of friction whatsoever, usually they are bounced out the door and vetoed out of this situation or whatever. And chances are, and I've seen this a lot of times. Now, this is a very, very broad statement. Okay, and there are people that there are people that are part of these things and not all of these things. But oftentimes the couple engages with other people outside of the triad dynamic, but the unicorn is not allowed to. And there's usually some kind of limitations like that.
Or they might insist upon their exclusivity and give them exclusivity as well.
Right.
So it might not be that they have a privilege that they're not extending to that person, but they are taking away a privilege that autonomous being should have decision-making power over.
The taking away part of it is the part of it that's toxic.
Yeah.
It's, to me, and this is a global statement across the board, whether you're talking about unicorn hunting, monogamy, non-monogamy, triads, quads, polycules, whatever. Anytime you are stepping into someone else's autonomy, that is harmful behavior. You are in control of everything that you can reach within your arm's reach. This is what I'm in control of right here. My wife, she does her thing. My girlfriend, she does her thing. I'm not in control of their decisions. They do what they want to do with their time. And so coming back, bringing that back to unicorn hunting, is when you start taking control of other people, that's where problems can be introduced into the equation. Now, as I was saying before, going into this, I felt like all unicorn hunters were the devil, like most poly people do. Like, it's just like, no, you don't do this because this is toxic as fuck. This is bad. You're controlling other people. And 99% of the time, that's true. But one of the things that I love about this group is by embracing everyone, we all get to learn from one another. And I have encountered some people that have been labeled as we've been labeled as unicorn hunters. Mm-hmm. We've been labeled that, and we're not even an actual like triad. Like, we're more of a V than a triad. Mm-hmm. My girlfriend is bisexual, but we don't all play together. But we have been lumped into that because we are an MFM or a FMF triad. And that's where the problem comes in, is we make assumptions about other people's relationships. We make assumptions based on arbitrary facts and lump them all in, throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so I have encountered closed triads, FMF triads, and I have encountered unicorn hunters who have negotiated their relationship in healthy ways. So it's possible to be a unicorn hunter. It's okay for you to say, my wife is bisexual. I'm not bisexual. I don't want to be with men. It is okay for those two people to say, you know what would really be great is if we had a third party in our relationship that we could have the interactions that we're looking for on a regular basis. But in the interest of safety and security, we kept that closed. And if you communicate that with whomever that you're dating or whomever you're connecting with, and it's all negotiated above board and it's handled in healthy ways, it is possible to be in that dynamic without harm. Just 1 second. The key thing is you're never going to have equity or equality. You're never going to have everything being equal all the way around the board. The connections, like you had said, I like to say relationships are as unique as a fingerprint. So the different relationships that exist within that triad dynamic are all going to be different, and to expect them to all be equal is unreasonable. Striving for equity is important, but it's also important to recognize that the relationship that one person has with one person won't be the same as the other. And as long as that's understood in that dynamic and in that setup, then it's not necessarily a bad thing any more than monogamy is. Like, monogamy, I could never be monogamous again, but when a couple gets together in monogamy and they agree to be faithful to one another and exclusive to one another, and they agree to be connected together, that is not in and of itself a toxic situation. And I think that adding a third person to that dynamic isn't necessarily a toxic situation either. It's a lot of the structure that's built around that can be harmful. That's my
beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I will add to that as long as it's not, let's get these two mixed up. As long as that's descriptive and not prescriptive. So in other words, You acknowledge, yes, this is the way we're going to go into this. All three people have agreed, but then something changes a year from now.
Right.
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 You know,
that has to be
for any
renegotiated.
one of the three people, and you just have to be open and willing to renegotiate that, right? And flexibility, right? You were saying, yeah, and allow other people the autonomy, flexibility. So the key words of today, children, are flexibility, autonomy. You know, seriously, allows the other people the autonomy to be able to pursue those relationships in a way that works for them, while still honoring the relationships that exist. So I think I completely agree with you that like you, I used to think that unicorn hunting was horrible until I actually realized I was fucking doing it.
Right.
Didn't even know it.
Right.
I was like, holy shit, I just fucking did that. Like, but then once I realized that number one, the way we did it was very above board.
Right.
Like we all sat down and we all had conversation after conversation and we negotiated what everybody was comfortable with and stuff. And I was like, okay, so we're all on the same page here. And when it changed, and we allowed that change to morph and move, right?
Right.
And so
absolutely.
And so I think those are the keys, right? It's not necessarily that it's an inherently bad dynamic, but it does have some toxic traits to it, just like couples privilege that you need to be aware of.
Well, and I think the couples privilege is particularly prominent in unicorn hunting. So just be cognizant of it. Yeah, Michael.
So the thing is, and we have addressed this earlier, that most people that are coming into our group that are unicorn hunters are usually pretty new at non-monogamy, and if there's one thing that almost everyone that's coming into non-monogamy shares, is they're stumbling into this without a clue of what they're doing.
Right.
And so what happens is they sit over here in the corner with their couple and they negotiate their thing and they're like, we're going to do this and it's going to be this and it's going to be amazing. And then they just go forth and they try and do that. And if there's one thing that I really wish that I could get everyone to do, is listen to the people that have been doing it for a while. Listen to the people who have the experience, who have the understanding of who have been where you are and have evolved past that. And hear what's being said and hear what's being, so that wherever your journey takes you, you have some tools in your toolkit already. You don't have to make those mistakes and hurt yourselves and hurt your people and hurt the person that you love and hurt the people that you're interacting with. And it'll help you more authentically connect with the people that you're trying to connect with, whether you're unicorn hunting or whether you're trying to find a couple to connect with or polycule or whatever it is you're trying to do.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think we're going to end there because that's a perfect wrap up, I think. Hey?
Hey.
Yeah, it's a great way to wrap it up.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for having me. It's been really great talking to you. I have to tell you, you two you're kind of the model for our group experts in our group. I love the dialogue that you guys bring to the group. And the advice that you guys bring is always absolutely perfect. And I love Leanne's called me out a couple of times, like, I don't actually necessarily agree with that. And it's like, Leanne, she's more than just really hot. She's really smart too.
Right?
Michael will be back on the show frequently. And, you can find him
and
here.
Funny.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. That means a lot to me, actually, because, sometimes honestly, I'm doing these posts early in the morning, late at night sometimes, and I'm just like, I think this is right. Does this seem right? Yeah, I'll reread it a couple times. I think that's right. Okay, we're sending it. Because I'm really driven to help, people navigate through that difficult time. And it is difficult. This is not an easy life to lead.
No, it is not.
In any way.
If it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Relating thing.
The other thing too is that that is one of the reasons that the ENM group, the Ethical Non-Monogamy group that you run, is my favorite group. It's because of that openness and that expansiveness and that allowance for discussion, right? And you don't always have to get it right. You don't, like I just wish there were, frankly, I just wish that most other groups were the same way, but I'm just grateful and glad that that group is there for people.
Right.
And so that when they do stumble upon it and they find it, and it's like, oh my God, you don't tolerate judgment, you don't tolerate abuse or rude comments or, dismissive comments or anything else like that. And I really appreciate that, because that creates a safe container.
Right.
And that's what I think people need in this world.
That really is the foundation of our group, is be kind. And you have to exercise kindness to people that you don't agree with. That's the hardest part, but it's also the most critical part. And
right.
Some people struggle with that. A lot of people struggle with that.
Some people think they're being kind, but they're actually not.
Right.
And then when it's pointed out that they're not being kind, or that they could have maybe used a different, language to bring that point across, then start to get defensive, and even that's not welcome. And that's really nice to hear and see. So anyway, yeah.
I could go on and on.
I have a client in 8 minutes, so
we better let you go.
I have a client in 38 minutes.
So we will put the link to your podcast. Yes.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
If you could send that to us, and to the Facebook group on our little blurb that goes along with our podcast.
Excellent.
Yeah, and people can find you there and become part of your community, because it's an awesome place to be. Honestly.
We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you.
Okay, well, thank you again, and we'll wrap up here.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Michael.
And remember,
choose love.
And keep it kind.
We'd love to hear your comments, questions, or topic suggestions. And remember to subscribe.
And you're invited to join our Facebook group, Empowered Now Relationship Support and Advice for All.
You can reach out to us on our websites at gregmillion.com
and leannemillion.com.
Or follow us on Instagram at gregmillion.lifecoach.
And at Leanne Million. And remember,
choose love.
Want to do that again?
Yeah.
This is our tagline. And Greg was somewhere else. Wakey, wakey. Yeah.
Remember,